This story was never meant to be told. From the moment it began, I was warned. If you reveal this, they'll call you insane, a liar, or worse, someone who has lost touch with reality. But the truth kept knocking at the door of my soul, relentless. And I knew it was time to share it. Not for my own sake, but for those who feel, deep within them, that there is more to this life than meets the eye. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, not from a nightmare, but from a strange sensation that someone was watching you? It's not a feeling that goes away quickly. You lie there, heart pounding, because you know that you aren't alone. No matter how dark the room is, no matter how silent the night, you can feel it. It's like a presence, unseen, yet undeniable. My name is Sylvia Browne, and I have lived with this presence most of my life. I have seen things others cannot see. I have felt things others cannot feel. I've spent years talking to the dead, guiding the lost souls who couldn't find their way home. I was a medium, a psychic. My life was devoted to helping others connect with what lies beyond. But there are things, deep things, I never told anyone. And this is one of them. That night in 2004, I came home after an exhausting session. The energy I had exchanged with the spirits drained me, leaving me empty inside. I collapsed into my bed, too tired to even say a prayer. I fell into a deep sleep, but it wasn't like any sleep I had ever known. I woke up somewhere else, not in my bedroom, not even in my body. I was standing on what felt like cold stone, the air thick, almost suffocating. There was no light, but I could see. Everything around me was gray, no color, just a hollow, empty shade. My body wasn't cold, but my soul felt a chill I had never experienced before. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't a vision. It was something much, much deeper. It was a transition. I wasn't alone. He was there, standing in front of me, a figure shrouded in shadow, tall, faceless, yet somehow familiar. There was no need for introductions. I knew he was my guide, though I didn't fully understand where we were going. He didn't speak a word, yet his thoughts filled my mind with clarity. "Are you ready?" he asked. I didn't know what to say. How could I be ready for something I didn't understand? But I nodded anyway, feeling a deep, unexplainable calm wash over me. There was no fear, no hesitation, just an overwhelming sense that whatever was about to unfold, I had to witness it. I had to be here. Without another word, we began to move. We walked through an eerie silence, past shadows that didn't belong to anyone. They hung in the air, not fully formed, but present nonetheless. I felt their eyes on me, or maybe it was just my own imagination, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being observed. And yet, there was no sound, no voice to guide me, except for the soft hum of my own thoughts. I tried to speak, to ask where we were going, but no words came. It was as if the very air we moved through held us in a kind of suspended silence. The path we followed seemed to stretch forever, down into the depths of an endless void. There was no up, no down. It was like falling without falling, as if we were simply existing outside of time itself. The deeper we went, the colder it became, not physically, but spiritually. It was a chill that sank deep into the core of my being, something that reached into my very soul. I wasn't just cold, I was empty. I wanted to stop, to question everything. But the guide didn't pause. His presence urged me forward, and I walked without thinking, without the ability to turn back. There was no return, I realized, only forward. We finally came to a stop in a vast space that felt infinite. It was an open expanse, yet there were no walls, no boundaries, just an endless gray. There, I saw them, the lost souls. They were suspended in time, caught in a loop of their own making. Some were screaming, but no sound escaped. Others stood motionless, unaware that they were even dead. Their faces reflected endless pain, regret, and sorrow. The guide didn't speak, but I could feel his presence beside me, urging me to understand. This wasn't punishment. This wasn't hell. This was a place of self-imprisonment. They were trapped by their own unresolved pain, their own inability to let go. And then the question echoed in my mind. Why show me this? The answer came not from him, but from somewhere deeper, somewhere I couldn't see. Because you have forgotten. The stillness around me was overwhelming, not just quiet, but heavy, as though the silence itself was a force pressing down on me. As my eyes adjusted to the dim gray space, I began to notice them, the souls. They were scattered throughout the vast emptiness, trapped in a suspended state, held by their unresolved regrets and lingering sorrow. A man stood in front of me, motionless, his gaze distant, as if he had forgotten how to blink. His hands, once clenched around an object, hung limply by his sides. There were no visible injuries, no signs of violence. He was simply stuck in the final moment of his life, endlessly replaying that moment, over and over. A loop of guilt and despair that he could not escape. Nearby, a woman kneeled on the cold, stone-like ground, her hands pressed to her face as she wept in silence. The grief on her face was overwhelming, consumed by the loss of her child. She couldn't let go of the self-blame, reliving that moment of tragedy again and again. I wanted to reach out to her, to tell her it wasn't her fault, but the words didn't come. I knew I couldn't help her, not yet. As I continued deeper into this space, more souls appeared. There was a young man, still dressed in the same clothes he had worn when he passed, his expression vacant, as though confused. He didn't realize he was no longer alive. Stuck in the moment of his death, he could not understand the transition he had undergone. This place wasn't hell, not in the way I had once imagined it. It wasn't filled with fire or torment, but it was a kind of prison, an emotional one, where souls are trapped in their own pain, unable to move forward. I stood still, struck by the enormity of what I was witnessing. These souls weren't being punished. They weren't being condemned. They were simply lost. They were stuck. The guide standing beside me remained silent, his presence calm and steady. I didn't need to ask any questions. His thoughts were clear. This is the result of attachment, he conveyed. This is what happens when one holds on to pain, regret, and guilt. For a moment, I could feel the weight of their suffering, and I understood how easily it could happen. How easily one could become trapped in their own sorrow, unable to move forward. How simple it was to fall into a cycle of emotional pain. Then I remembered the warning. You've forgotten. The truth was here, but it was hidden beneath layers of pain, buried behind the walls we build to protect ourselves. It was as if I needed to remember who I truly was, beyond the roles I played, beyond the weight of the pain I had carried. And just as that understanding dawned on me, the voices of the souls began to fade. Their presence grew distant, replaced by a deeper, quieter knowing. The space around me began to shift. The grayness, once so all-encompassing, started to fade, replaced by a soft, golden light that felt warm, yet distant. I didn't know where the light came from, or why it appeared, but I could feel its presence. It was soothing, like a mother's touch, but also unsettling, as if it knew something I didn't. Then a figure emerged from the light. She was unlike anything I had ever seen. Her form wasn't physical, but I could feel her. She didn't speak, but I understood her. Every thought she had, every feeling she shared was like a sudden rush of understanding pouring into my mind. It wasn't words that she conveyed, but an overwhelming sense of knowing. She wasn't a person, not anymore. She was an entity, a soul that had long transcended the physical world. She radiated a presence that was peaceful, yet incredibly powerful, as if her very existence had the weight of all eternity. "You've been seeking truth," she communicated, not through words, but through pure understanding. But truth cannot be found through answers. Answers are illusions. Truth is something you must remember. I felt a shiver run through me. Remember? How could I remember something I had never known? My mind scrambled for an explanation, but there was none. Her words resonated deep within me, and I knew somehow they were true. I had been looking for answers my whole life. Answers to life, to death, to everything in between. But now I understood. I had been looking in the wrong place. Answers were temporary, fleeting. They didn't bring peace. The entity's presence filled the space, pulling me deeper into the understanding she was offering. "You've replaced silence with noise. You filled the void with words, with explanations, with predictions," she continued. "But silence holds the truth. It has always held it. You have simply forgotten how to listen." Tears welled up in my eyes, unbidden. I had spent so much of my life trying to make sense of everything, trying to explain the unexplainable. I had written books, appeared on shows, and given answers that people sought. But what if those answers weren't the truth? What if I too had been lost in the noise? I had filled my life with things that, in the end, only kept me from what mattered most. And then she showed me something else. The image of my own life unfolded before me, not like a movie, but like a series of vivid emotional moments. I saw myself sitting on a stage, smiling for the cameras. The audience cheered, but inside, I felt hollow. I was afraid. What if I wasn't enough? What if I couldn't help the people who came to me for answers? What if I failed them? The entity touched my mind again, and the truth hit me like a wave. I knew that not everything I had shared was truth, but I had been too afraid to be silent, too afraid to admit that I didn't have all the answers. She spoke again, but this time, the message wasn't about me. It was about everyone. "You're all searching, but you're searching for permission to feel. You don't need permission. You need to remember who you are." I felt the weight of those words, the pressure, the guilt, the fear I had carried with me for years. Suddenly, they lifted, and in their place was peace. Quiet, gentle peace. I had always been seeking, but now I realized it wasn't answers I needed. It was silence. It was remembering the truth that had always been inside me.
When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in that ethereal space anymore. I was back in my living room, lying on the couch. The morning light was creeping through the curtains, casting soft shadows across the room. It felt as though time had shifted, yet everything was the same, and yet nothing felt the same. The air was different, thick with something I couldn't explain, something that had shifted deep inside of me. I sat up, feeling a strange sense of calm that I had never experienced before. The noise that once filled my mind, constant chatter, worries, doubts, was gone. It was as if the very rhythm of my thoughts had changed, slowing down to a peaceful, natural pace. I wasn't afraid, not of the unknown, not of the future, not of anything. I was simply present. I walked to the kitchen, made myself a cup of tea, and sat by the window. The outside world was still as it always had been, busy, rushing forward, unaware of the transformation that had just taken place inside me. But I wasn't the same. I had been to the edge of truth, felt its rawness, and now I was returning, changed, with a deeper understanding of who I was and why I was here. The souls I had seen, those trapped in their own pain and regret, no longer haunted me. Their suffering was still real, but I knew now that it wasn't my job to fix it. I could only share the truth, the quiet truth I had found in that place between worlds. The truth that wasn't about knowing, but about remembering. I looked out the window, feeling the stillness within me. And for the first time in a long time, I knew I didn't need to seek any longer. I had found it, not in the answers, but in the silence. And that silence, for the first time, felt like home.